Hi, I'm Cynthia. On the IN2G show today, I'm going to be talking about paternity fraud.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm here at the IN2G show, and I'll be talking about church hurt and why are our churches not safe spaces.
Hello everyone, my name is Craig and I'm here on the IN2G show, and today I'll be focusing on the importance of fathers in our society.
Hi guys, my name's Aaron and today I'll be talking about the role of AI in modern society.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Asewusu and you're watching the IN2G show. We are here to have another conversation, and of course I've got new panel members. And who are they? Yes. Who are you?
I'm Anastasia and I'm an executive assistant.
I'm Craig Young. I'm an educator and children's program developer.
Okay, and I'm Aaron, teaching assistant and photographer.
Right, so we're going to start with actually my subject matter first. And my subject matter is, guys, I want to talk about paternity fraud, right? Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the video with Kirk Franklin, Father's Day.
Yes.
That's gone around. Mm-hmm. And some of my viewers might not have seen it. I highly recommend it, but have a box of tissues because it was very emotive. And essentially what happened was he's 53 years old. So Kirk Franklin's 53 years old. He has been told by his mother that a particular man was his dad. When the man was dying, he went to see him and had a conversation. And fast forward to now, 2023, he's found out that actually that was a lie. There's a different person, a different man that is his dad. Now, in this particular program, I'd call it a mini documentary. He does a DNA test. He finds out that it's actually true this man is his father. He goes to his mother, shows her the DNA test. She denies that he's his father, even with the DNA test. And he does it again. She still denies it. And there's a couple of things that I want to touch on. I want to ask you what you guys think about paternity fraud. Do you think that we should have a mandatory rule globally that when a woman has a child, whether she's married or not married, that a DNA test is done for that child and the father is put on that birth certificate? Now, there can be another box that has a section maybe for social father or something else, that, like, you know, somebody who adopts in the future. But as a matter of course, we have that done across the board. What is your thoughts on that?
I like that, paternity fraud. That's a new title. I'm just used to it as, you know, jacket, you know, this. I'm not used to that. You know, that's a nice term. But I think that's a very touchy subject in the sense that you would hope that an individual or two individuals that have intercourse, that they would be knowledgeable, that it's the two of them, and that if there's a child conceived, that they know. My issue is that there's too much, and you know, we've all seen the Maury show or whatever. You are not the father. Why are you going through all that trauma and putting children and families through that mess? You need to know who you lie down with. When we were teaching, or when I was teaching years ago, we would teach, even in PSHE, that you cannot, if you were sleeping with unprotected sex, if you have intercourse, you're supposed to wait the minimum 8 to 12 weeks before you sleep with someone else. Due to the fact that then you will then know if you've had any kind of copulating with the individual that you slept with. When you have all these crossovers, that's when you have this mess. Also, you'll have women, sadly, who prefer one person for the father because they maybe have financial security, this or whatever, than another person who actually is the dad. So me personally, I'm all for everybody knowing who's everybody. I like accountability, but I know that it can create a very large caveat, even in some social circles.
100%.
When I saw the video, and you know, to know that Kirk lived all these years thinking the person who, that the father who was there, and he spent so much energy into that man, and he has died, gone to his grave. Kirk actually said that he hated him because of what he did, and he hated the wrong man.
Yes.
And this was all down to the mother, and how impactful that was for Kirk. And then it tripled over, it went over to his children. And the mom up to now still would not accept or given any answers to that. And I just think, it's, yes, there's a way to make sure that children know their parents, and I don't know why it's so difficult for some people to not come forward with that information. But making it mandatory, sometimes, the fathers can't be found. So how do you get that information? Because there are situations where you might sleep with somebody and you don't know who, or which one. They didn't wait the period, as you said, but they got pregnant. And they can't trace that person. What happens there? So how do we make that mandatory?
So what I was thinking about mandatory is that when the child is born, a test is done. So before they get any information is put on the birth certificate, whether you're married or not married, it's done and it's established who the father is. So there isn't any isms or schisms in 53 years down the line. You're 53 years old, as Kirk Franklin had now found. He hated and was upset with the wrong man. I mean, there's a number of things that I would like to pick up on that, because in the actual documentary, I mean, I was crying, but also vexed at some of the things that was going on. Like, for example, his aunt, which is his mother's sister, was requiring him to call him his aunt. And I was feeling like, well, where were you when he said he was hungry and he couldn't eat? He had to go and find things from the rubbish bin. You want to be called an aunt, but you haven't. To me, titles, being a dad, being a mum, being an aunt, has got an action with it. You don't just get the title just because the title. Does that make sense? So for me, going back to what you were saying, I'm saying that at the point where before you get like, I think 30 days before you need to put the child's name onto the birth certificate. In that period of time, a test needs to be done with the husband or the partner or whoever it may be, and to clarify who the actual father is as mandatory.
But you have 9 months for the child to be born. So what happened if it was a one-night stand and that person is nowhere to be found and they can't find it? Will you be able to find their from the DNA test or whatever of that child? Would you be able to find the father there? You would have to find the man.
But can I just ask, so that kind of person that would just disappear out of the blue like that, would you not think that the woman would know the kind of person that she is before sleeping with him?
It should. But my question, because you're saying it's a mandatory thing to do the test. If you do the test for when the child is born, how are you going to know if the father is not around and has disappeared?
I mean, to be honest with you, I hate this, it sounds bad, but it's just too bad. Because, okay, I heard that they're going to introduce this kind of law in the US and parts of Jamaica as well, where it's mandatory DNA testing. And funnily enough, people who are involved in the child support industry are up in arms about it. And when you actually dig deeper, the reason why is because a lot of women, and I'm not saying this is representative of all women, but there are a lot of women out there who essentially use these men to get a certain amount of money every month from the man in child support, and they go and spend it on themselves, essentially. And so what this does, this kind of draws a line in the sand where we're saying, this person's not the father. So if I take a test, I'm not the father, I've had sex with you, obviously, but I'm not the father, so I'm in no way responsible. So it takes the opportunity for the woman to blame someone out of her hands, basically, and say, if this person's not the biological father, then he's not the father. If he wants to adopt him of his own free will, the child of his own free will, then fair enough. But biology comes first, and if you're not the biological father, then you're not really obliged to look after the child or have anything to do with the child in general, and that angers a lot of people. Why do you think it angers women? Because it means, respectfully, child support isn't as easy to get anymore.
But do you know what it is? Because the thing is, there's three ways where they say paternity fraud can take place. So paternity fraud can take place through the fact that the mother denies that, gives the wrong information about the wrong person. It could also be, they say that another way is if you go through IVF or an assisted way of getting pregnant, they can also lie through that. And the other one is that the fact that the mother believes that's the person that is the father and it isn't. So they're the three ways. And in that, from what I've looked legally, you can get compensation for emotional and financial distress and through the courts if you go through paternity issue through a family solicitor. Now, what you mentioned about the fact that, child support was a factor, but if you were to put someone through that court system, they don't have the money, then it's almost like it's a pointless exercise. So for me, it's not just the fact that for the person who's been put into a paternity forward situation, the man, but also the child. The child thinks there's an emotional connection, there's an emotional thing that goes with the children that is also needs to be considered. Because if you have, like you said, if we just stick to the facts that biologically this is not your dad or that person's your dad, then it's clear from the offset. Now, even if the dad doesn't want to have that connection with you, it's still established, isn't it?
But I don't think that's what it's there for in the first place. It's just to kind of legally clear up who's responsible and who's not. It's not really meant to, because the state is only there to make sure people are responsible for their own actions. The state can't legislate for emotions and family issues and stuff like that. You can't legislate against those things. So, in that regard, there's not really much you can do, really, is there?
There's a caveat though. You have a caveat where some of the cases that I've dealt with when I was in the legal profession, you have rape cases. They're still current now. Somebody has been raped. The mum cannot and will not, they will go through the trauma. We've got people who have been charged with rape, they are incarcerated, and they now want paternity. They want to have dealings with the child. That puts that parent in trauma continuously. So that's where in some cases they let it be closed, where the person is not aware because of the damage that has been done. And then it's for the mother to share with the child that this person, that your father was someone that had, whatever. Because a child that hears that they come from that type of environment is damaged. And so it's more to just, sadly, we've got too many people who are lax, and I'm not impressed, where you should know who the father of the child is. And that's male and female. Both need to take responsibility. But the reality is there are some situations where it can be so detrimental that it's actually better off that they're not known. And then you have some situations where the men are fully aware that's not their child, but they are still willing to be with the mother and take the child on as their own.
Which I wouldn't do that.
That's their choice.
You wouldn't do it. Why? No. You wouldn't do it, you said.
No.
Why?
No.
What's your rationale for me?
Because to be frank, the way I see it, it's not my child, not my responsibility. As far as I'm aware, I'm quite a fertile person, so I know who I'm going to be doing it with and doing the business with and having children. So I don't get the appeal of men trying to look after somebody else's child. I just don't get it.
I don't think it's a trying to look after, but because of love, and you will take on whatever responsibility. So if you have a mother who has a child, then you will naturally take on that.
Nah.
So Aaron, are you saying that if you met somebody, a woman, and she had a child, would that be a no for you then?
No, it ends right there, 7 times right there. That'll be it.
Because you're not.
It's not to say that. Look, it's not for me to judge people's circumstances, but ultimately I want something for myself, which is a woman that I can start a family with, and I don't want to be a part of I don't want to be a step parent. I don't want to be, for lack of it, I know it sounds bad. I don't want to look after someone's leftover baggage, essentially. I don't want to be the person that steps in and replaces somebody's father, because that kind of undermines fatherhood. So if it means that anyone can pick to be a dad, basically, it means that there's no onus on the woman to pick a decent man. She can sleep with one guy and have sex with the guy and have a child by him. He can do a runner, and the next guy will come in and look after him. So it's like there's no incentive for sexual responsibility, because no matter what you do, a next man will come and look after your child. So what's the point?
Can I say you are okay if the person is widowed or There's different scenarios.
There's different scenarios, obviously, but generally speaking, no.
What if you find out then that, you know...
The husband's dead. She could have been married to her husband's past.
Well, how old is the child in that case?
Doesn't matter. I know somebody that, sadly, they're in the military. The mom was pregnant, went through, he's passed. That child never knew the father.
Then, it's not for me.
What if you then marry the woman and then later on she tells you that, you know, she have a child? And you find
a child with somebody else?
Yeah, but you never knew that before.
Probably looking at divorce still. I'm not gonna lie to you. A part of no children is hard to understand. No children. No children, I'm sorry. It's not for me. It's not for me. I apologise, it's not what I want.
Do you know what? I respect you. Because
it's not for me, it's not what I want.
You need to be straight with your values and your standards. And if that's not what you want, that is not what you want.
For me, it's not even
that's
about...
all right.
It's not even about trying to judge her and say, because you did this,
No,
it's not about that. It's not what I want for myself, I don't care. It's not
your reality, that's not you. So what about, I mean, there is another aspect, because Kerry Washington, the lady from Scandal, she's written a book, Thicker Than Water, but she's exposed that she was going to go on a program called Find Out Your Roots, which they do a DNA test with your parents and stuff like that. And before she can go on them, she told her parents, and then her parents end up telling her that her dad was not her dad, and they went through artificial processes to have a child, and that's how they got her. So through her whole life, she was under the impression that that's her dad.
But he was.
But they went through a process to get the child. So it wasn't like the mum went to a man and didn't know. It was more of like, it was a process that they went through. What are your thoughts on that, Aaron? If that's the situation, do you think that's a reasonable thing to do? Do you think that them not telling her was okay?
I mean, how old is she now? You know, in the 40s, isn't it?
It's about 40s, yeah.
And all this time they didn't say a word until this.
Onto this situation.
For me,
program that was
I would have a problem with my parents if they did that to me, because that would be extreme levels of deceit and like almost misleading, being misled, and it would kind of change my worldview. It probably would damage me. The younger you get, the more damaged you are, essentially, in my opinion. So she's older now, so I guess she can handle it, but even then, it will still be traumatic. But I wouldn't be able to... it's hard for me to explain because I'm not in the situation, but it would change a lot of things, essentially.
So in that case where you have going through the
problems
of having
children,
how would that DNA be?
So what would have happened, the program is that Find Your Roots. So what would have happened is that you come on the program, they do a DNA test of your parents so they can find your lineage.
Right.
So before she told her parents that she's going on that program, but obviously they know the program, which is that they're going to do tests on the dad, they're going to do the test on the mum. And it would have come out that that's not your dad because that DNA does not match with your dad. Yeah. So because she told them that, that's when it came out that they told her, because she was going to go on the program and it would have come out. Yeah. And she had to they told her then. But like...
Did they not think that she'll find out after a while anyway, irrespective of this program? Do you not think that there would have been a way?
Not necessarily, because unless you go through that
DNA
had the mindset to go and find out your real dad, because why would I, if I'm living all my life in my 40 years and I'm, why would I think differently? Why would I want to go and find out? It's just because the program comes up, which would then give a different result from what you know. So
that's deceitful,
No, reality-wise, it's not deceitful. When you do IVF or any of those intravenous ways, you've actually gone paid. Sometimes you even look for the donor, things like this. It's a legitimate thing. You have not been deceitful. What it is that then you and your husband or your spouse could not have a child in your own naturally. So you've gone to another recourse. Now, that is her dad. The person that gave the IVF, they're not dealing with her. They've just given their sperm. The mum most probably was the egg donor and that person was the sperm. And the father, her actual father, who's not her biological, but he's her actual father, was in agreement with it. They've paid for that. It's all documented.
Yeah, but I think I agree with Aaron.
No, it's not deceitful in the sense that they could not have a child naturally themselves. So they went to that process. Now, like we know when I was in child services, if you're going to, there's two things. There's an open adoption and there's a closed adoption. What they could do, which they're trying to change in the IVF sector, is that they can have it open where they're meant to tell the child that you were born to us of IVF. So that child is now aware. But the caveat with that is that the human nature is, I want to now know where I come from. Because now you are not the person that I am. So even with open adoptions, where you know that's not my biological parent, there's two other biological parents. Your brain, because it's human nature, wants to now find the real person.
But that's the thing before, where it comes, what I was talking to you about before, about how, you know, I feel like men nowadays are treated as essentially glorified sperm donors, where it doesn't matter who the father is anymore. Not really, because IVF, I think, is just, okay, it's going to sound really bad, but I think IVF is just a nice way of, like, it's very tricky for me. It's really tricky because, remember what I said before about how it doesn't matter who the mum sleeps with because the next guy, you know what I mean? It's a bit like that, but it's like everyone knows this time, where it becomes a bit more wholesome. But the basic idea, what you said about human nature, where it's like, blood is thicker than water in the sense that you can be my dad in everything except biology, but there is a biological element to it where I want to know who my real dad is, who my real parent is. And so with that in mind, can a person really be your dad without being your dad? Does that make sense? Can you really be a person's dad without being their dad?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes. Because you've got to ascertain, I mean, especially working in the system, you have people that is their biological child and they are evil. That's your biological child. How can you be so evil and unkind? And then you'll have a stranger that will be loving and caring and take care of that individual. And that child will gain more and have much more emotional, mental, and physical stability with someone who wasn't their biological parent. That's the reason why we even have adoption. I understand why we have open adoptions. It gives the child more knowledge. Like you said, so it's not just, we chose you, we love you, that's why we wanted you. IVF is the same. They want to have it as open IVF so that you can tell. But again, if there's something medically wrong on either party, it doesn't have to even be the man. It could be the woman. And so that husband and wife or that couple decide that this is what they want to do. They're not being deceitful. They could not medically copulate themselves. So they've gone to get assistance.
Don't you think that is reasonable? If you're going to go down that path, it's reasonable to tell that child openly. Yeah, but I mean, like sooner than, I mean, she's 40-something years old, and then she's going to go on a program. She wants to find her roots, even though she knows in her mind that was her dad, that was her mum. That's what she thought, but she was just going to go and find, to get some connection, which is a natural thing that you mentioned. But wouldn't it have been better for her to have been told?
That's what I'm saying, it's deceitful.
To sit her down before she got to that point where, because now she's told you, I'm going to this program, finding my roots. Now you're in a bit of a conundrum.
It's deceitful.
Craig, what do you think?
I'm just thinking, listening to this conversation is, when Mary got back pregnant, she was told, and yes, we have technology have moved on and science and everything. We can have IVF and all those things. Mary was immaculately conceived, and Jesus was born, and it hasn't been an issue for that lineage. So I'm just thinking, children who are born through that process shouldn't be meant to feel like it's a problem, or even if they go and find the real donor, the person who was there at the beginning, shouldn't make much of a difference. And the question you asked about whether it's a father, if he can be a dad without being a dad, it's about, we can look at it two ways. The difference between a father and a dad.
Yeah.
And how important that is.
But then I get what you're saying, but then if it's not a problem, then why is the biological element there in the first place? If it's always going to be there, it's always going to cause an issue where it's like, there's always going to be this thing where he's my dad, even though no matter he's raised me and brought me up and everything, but only up until a certain point. As long as that desire is there to find out who your real parent is, it's not going to be the same, no matter what you do. He's your dad in everything except for your blood, essentially. And for some people, that's not enough. There needs to be more than just.
So that's what I'm saying. You've got to, like you said, for some it's not enough, but there are others that they are comfortable. So you've got a gentleman right now who's been banned. He was a student when he started. He's fathered 200 children. They have now said you cannot father any more children. It's got so bad that they're saying that some of the children that he did when he was a student that are now teens going into adulthood, they could meet each other and now have an encounter, and they are siblings. So he now has been banned. He doesn't care about the children or whatever. He did it. He said he got paid. It helped him to go through uni. He was still doing it. The medical professionals in his state have said no more. So he doesn't want to meet those kids. He's not interested. He was just doing that for money.
Because
do you see what I mean?
Gains,
yeah. So that in that capacity, how that person gonna feel? Now I've hunted the place down, and I don't want you. I just did it so I could go through school. Do you see what I mean? There's some things it's best that you don't know, because that is more traumatic. But then now in that state, they've had to make it known because they recognize that 2 of the children had met. And so they've had to put it out there now that this is the case. That's 200 children that he's fathered.
Yeah, that's one guy though.
No, I know, but I'm just saying though. But there could be more like that. Do you see what I mean? It's a lot of college students.
I get
give
it.
Sperm donation.
It's fundamentally still deceitful though. I can't lie. It's fundamentally still deceitful.
You just think that they should told. So what age do you think would have been a reasonable time for them to have told her?
Probably when she's in her late teens to early adult years.
And that would have sent her on a spiral.
Yeah.
So when do you tell her then?
Working with young people, trust me.
So when do you tell her then? Because no matter, it's lying is lying, you know. Even if it's in the interest of the child, it's still lying.
Is it lying or just withholding information for the benefit of the child?
No, I mean,
That's something we've got to think about.
it's still lying. Lying is lying. Depends. It's still lying. It's lying.
So you would say you're 2, because maybe you start and say, "Daddy, no, not daddy. That's not daddy." Think about what you're saying. So no, that's not daddy. That's just the man that's taking care of you. Your daddy, we don't know who he is. Do you see what I'm saying? How are you going to broach that?
That is the reality for a lot of people.
Well, how are you going to broach that then, so that individual does not feel as damaged?
Same way, I think it's the same with that if you have an adopted child, that you would approach it in the same way. If you adopted a child, you'd have to, people do sit down with their adopted children and say, you was adopted, but we chose you. And I think it would have been the same way that they should approach it. I think leaving her in her 40s, for her to then go to a program and then...
You have to remember, majority of people who do IVF, except for her, because she's got the money and she's going on a program, they don't go and find out anything else. That's their parents, and it's only in the past 10 years that they're really going and looking and roots and this and whatever. You think when this stuff started years ago, people weren't doing that. Unless you was dying and you needed a blood transfusion, do you know what I mean? Or you had a kidney thing, that's when you found out. Otherwise, ain't no one bothering with you. That was your mum and dad.
Yeah, but that's the point. This is what we're saying. Is that
reality TV mess up, man?
No, because I think it goes back to what I was saying about the Kirk situation. That, you know, in that situation, and even with the situation with, you know, Kerry Washington, I'm saying that maybe if you have a mandatory DNA test that is done, whether you are going through the process of IVF or whatever it may be, that is a mandatory. Now, it can be closed in terms of if it's IVF, but the point of the matter is, or even if it's a rape matter, it needs to be closed for criminal reasons or whatever, but it needs to still be there so that everyone's clear who the father is.
Oh, but
and
IVF, they know who the father is.
Yeah.
Remember, IVF is
but I'm thinking
they know who the father is, but they maybe didn't tell her. Yeah. But they know who the father is.
And she doesn't. To select. But that's the point. She doesn't.
That's what I'm saying. So they know who the father is, and if they had it even closed when they do, because sometimes they ask you with IVF, would you like to know who the donor is or whatever? Because sometimes you can select the donor. Right, so that's very different. You can select a donor, so you can know eyes, height, this, education, all that's there. Or would you like it closed when the doctors find a viable sperm for you? So they will have more information on that. And like you said, it is then for them to determine, okay, maybe 5, 7, who knows? We just want to share with you, we loved you, mommy and daddy, one of us couldn't produce. Think of this conversation. And now, this is the reason why we had to go and have IVF. Now, not biologically your dad, but he's still your dad. What?
I think to make sure that we have the results and know the DNA, what we probably need women to do is take a sample at the end of sex. So they have that to be
Well,
why could they just not be so as promiscuous? I don't know why it's complicated.
No,
I'm glad you said it. If I had said it, I would have got in trouble. So I'm glad you said it. Yeah, I would have got in trouble.
I'm annoyed.
Glad you said it.
I'm very
I'm glad you said
irritated
it.
with the fact that, like, when I've watched Maury and I'm like, really, heifer? At the end of the day, how are you sleeping with so many people? You're nasty. I just don't get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is this with you? I mean, I know throughout our world, we are created to want to be with someone else, you know, and to love and to care. And I understand there's abuse and neglect, and sometimes you end up being wrongly wired because of the abuse and the trauma you face as a child. You become numb and you can see that, but that's not all. Especially, I'm going to bring this in now, then feminism. Feminism now, it's okay. The men are players, the women are this. I don't care. You need to know who you're lying down with. You are accountable for your body and for if you bring another life into this world. I don't want to hear any excuses. You don't know who the dad is? Why? You don't know who, if you father the child? Why? That's you lot's issue. They should be held accountable. That's why I like that child that sued the parents. I'm with that. Because at the end of the day, I didn't ask to come. You went and had me. Fix your business.
So, on that note, Anastasia, what's your matter for today?
Oh well, I might change it now. No, I'm kidding. I have two, but I'm going to go with this one because it's been talked about again last week. My thing is church hurt. So when I was growing up, I used to watch, with my dad and everything, a lot of programs. And, you know, I like fighting and stuff like that. You know, mafia, this, whatever. You go to the church, it was a sanctum. It was a safe place, right? Now I'm finding church can be one of the most vicious and volatile environments on the planet. You are coming and joining a church space, a faith space, and you're hoping to find peace. You're looking, you're searching. That's most of the time why people, unless you're born into it, but you know, and there you may have come, a prime example, let me use mine. I was a teen mum and I wasn't saved or anything, wasn't in the church, but I was called Jezebel, I was called harlot, I was pushed down the church steps, all kinds of things because I was pregnant and I was flaunting my sins in the church. How many years later, that mess is still going on. They may not be as physical, but people are being still unkind, they're malicious, people do not feel safe. We've got people going through traumas in our churches and they can't speak out about it because they are more fearful of what they will encounter from the individuals within the church than if they speak up about it. I don't get that.
What's your thoughts, guys?
Well, I'll say, I'm sorry about your experience. Generally speaking, what I'd say, I think there is a very key difference between being safe and being comfortable. In terms of being safe, when you say safe in church, what do you mean by being safe? Just, 'cause I have my own definition, but I just want to ask you what your definition is.
So maybe because I'm coming from a counselling education standpoint, I've had young people come to me and share their all, so to speak. And they know that it's with me. I inform them. If it's a self-harming or a safeguarding issue, I have to report that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
but
cool.
otherwise, you should feel safe to be able to share that with me. I don't necessarily have to give you a solution. Sometimes someone just needs to be heard. But you know that is safe with me. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I'm saying, a prime example, again, when I lost my job, I went to the church and I was told about this, a Good Samaritan Fund. It's very difficult for anyone to humble themselves to go and ask for help, right? You go to your church and I was told, how did you get yourself in that situation? Well, common sense, I lost my job. But already now, I felt like it was my fault. You know, that I was now not able to look after myself and nearly lost my home. Do you see what I mean? So, you know, I've known other people that have gone through difficulties, whether it's financial, they've struggled, they don't want to say because they're embarrassed. We shouldn't feel embarrassed to say, look, at this time, I'm not doing that great. and we get that support.
But is the reason why you feel embarrassed? Okay. Is the reason why you feel embarrassed necessarily the church's fault, or is it a human nature kind of thing? Because no matter what you do, like there are people who are on food banks right now, people who are not Adventist or Christian or whatever. They come from all walks of life. People are having, it takes a certain level of humbling to go to a food bank and say, I don't even have that to eat. Please help me. Is that necessarily a church thing or more of a human pride kind of thing?
But I don't think, from what you have said, I don't see it as whether it's a pride or it's about the church where the place you should be feeling the safest. You have an issue, then it's like you are the worst person. And in fact, what you have is the holy people in the church, and the church then becomes a place of high standard. You can't fall. And those same people who are up the top and presenting as being the holy and the righteous, if you see them in behind closed doors, it might be a different thing. And because the church, it is said the church is like a hospital. That's where everybody is sick, including the pastor and the elder and everybody. There's something on social media I saw where the guy went to church, I think his phone rang off, and the way how he treated them, he felt so bad, he went to the pub. And when he went to the pub, he was so accepted, he never went back to the church. Because of that little thing. People come to church with their children, and the child is making noise, and you look around at them, and you tell them to shut up, and that sort of thing. It's just becoming a place where nothing should go wrong. You have to be holy. And then the adults don't speak to the younger ones and make them know, I've been through that, I've done that, I've been on the wrong side, but they present as being the most holy and righteous. They have never sinned. So if you have in your situation where you had a child out of wedlock, you are outcast. They can't say anything good of that, and that is why
I do agree with you there, because what we do tend to do is put people on pedestals, and so we say this is how a person's supposed to act, and they get all the fame and notoriety that comes with that. But then when they slip up now, or they find out who they really are behind the scenes, it's a different story. So that's why, for example, you hear about pastors who that cheat on their wives. For example, I don't know if you guys know a guy online called Derek Jackson.
Yes.
Derek
Jackson.
And basically he present. I don't. Have you heard of him?
I think so.
Basically, for people who are watching, it's about a guy who presented himself as this stereotypical, faithful black Christian man and that, only to find out he's cheating on his wife behind the scenes and stuff.
He did it for quite a while
right.
as well.
Yeah, and so,
Yes, apparently.
I mean, he's a unique case because there are people out there who aspire to do that, who want to be seen as that. But generally speaking, we as a church do that as well, where if you're a pastor, an elder, or a deacon, you're going to be held to a certain standard, a higher level of account, which means that if you fall short of those standards, then you're not really going to be treated as well. Because as much as we criticize people who consider themselves to be holy, there's also the other caveat to it where when they fall, and when they fall harder than the rest of us fall. So if you're not seen as holy in the first place, it doesn't matter as much. Whereas with those people, if they're seen as to be holy, they're going to be held to a higher standard. So if they do fall, and when they do fall, it's going to be an even sadder situation than for example, your situation, for example.
Can I just ask you a question? So are we saying then that the church should have a standard? And I'm not saying that what they did to you was right, because I think that's really quite shocking to hear you, like people being pushed down this. I mean, you're pregnant and it's obviously visible. So to be pushed down the stairs while you're pregnant because you're allegedly flaunting a sin. I mean, gossiping and even that physical abuse, that's what I'll call it, you're pushing somebody is not acceptable. That is seen in itself as unacceptable in the context of Christianity. But what I want to ask you about is that should we not have a standard? Should we not say, right, these things are not acceptable? Like, for example, you mentioned about being promiscuous and whatever. That's, you want to know why you don't know the person that you're sleeping with and why you don't know that person's your dad. Should we not have a standard, or should we? How is the church supposed to behave? Should it be the church's standard, or should it be God's standard?
You're right. That's what to say.
Yeah, because what we have is, you go to different churches. Every church have their standard and their rules, and based on person's own agenda and beliefs and systems, and you have those who have come over from the Caribbean or Africa, and they want to bring that culture into the church, and they have their standards. For example, you should have always wear a hat when you're on the platform. You shouldn't be showing sleeves and all of those things. And is it a culture? Is it a rule for that is made by man, or is it God's standard? So if you're going to God's standard, remember when they brought the woman to be stoned, and God said, "Which one of you is without a sin?" So which one of us, regardless of where our position in the church, doesn't have a sin?
But then doesn't that come back to, then that means you're saying it's God's standard, but then that means we make up the church, don't we? So should we be taking responsibility individually and collectively, that if we see that kind of behaviour, like what happened to Anastasia, what then do we say? Do we step in? Do we say something? Because this stuff is, the church hurt. I've heard a few people that have gone online. I mean, one of the most famous persons that said it is Tyler Perry. And they said he had church hurt and he had to work through it, to work through that. And it's church hurt. Some people have said they've had church hurt because maybe they were abused in the church and nobody stepped up, nobody stepped in to deal with the situation, because maybe a pastor, an elder, somebody that was like seen as on the pedestal, was in a position of power that did it, and it was covered up or it was moved. What are the solutions to this sort of thing?
My one thing to that has always been, what would Jesus do? So how would Jesus treat somebody who have gone wrong? Look at David. Look how sinful David, and what did God say? He's a man after my own heart. So yes, we will all slip up, but did God condemn everybody at the same time and not give them a chance, not try to bring them back to the fold? Yes, they have done wrong, but instead of pushing the wrong in the face, it's about how we put our armor on that person to bring them back into the fold, not to push them out forever. I think that's where the hurt comes in, where you're going into this space where you expect to get. Yes, you have to take responsibility for your action and whatever wrongs you have done, but at least, help me. Help. Not push me away.
I get what you're saying. I'm going to give you an idea. You don't have to have done something wrong for the church to hurt you. One of the things that is very taboo in the church today is if you say you're depressed.
That's very true.
Nobody has done wrong, but you are going through something that has made you depressed and you're feeling low. So when you go in and they say, good morning, you don't want to say the same good morning. You don't want to say, and you are now seen as low. You are now seen as weak. You are now seen as an outcast. There's something wrong with them. They're depressed. Why should you be depressed? Just pray about it.
Yeah, it happened to me.
You know what I mean?
It happened to me. I think church can become quite performative at times, where it's more to do with how it looks as opposed to how it actually is. So I get what you're saying. I agree with you on that. And with the abuse thing, going back to that, I believe that you should be held accountable for your actions. Not because they're on the pedestal or they're in a position of authority means they can act however they want. So I do agree with you that. I think the thing with me, it's always that line between human empathy and certain objective standards that we should have as Christians, where the two clash sometimes, where is it always the appropriate thing in certain situations to follow strict rules? Because if that happens, then it kind of undermines the rule of law in itself as a general standard. I don't see the point of having rules or guidelines or instructions or commandments. We're not going to follow them. And so it's kind of, in my mind, there's always been that clash where I have to have the human side of it, but I also have to be objective about it as well. And sometimes I don't know where that line is drawn. So it's quite tricky for me, I'll be honest.
I think to clear lines for me are, if someone needs support because they've been depressed or they've come to be abused or anything in that way, we should not be judging them or, someone has come and said, we've got people in our church that said, I have been abused, and they are then victimized more. Instead of even saying that the perpetrator is wrong, they are being victimized more. That makes no sense to me.
I also want to hear about the people, sorry to cut you off. I also want to hear about the people when it comes to sex specifically and like pregnancy. I want to hear the people of like the parents of the father of the child. I'm not going to ask you, it's not my business. I'm just saying, in general speaking, if you're going to judge the teenage parent, the teenage girl for having a pregnancy, I want you to hold the father of the child accountable similarly. But it's only because you can't really hide the baby. It
But
becomes a
we
bit more.
often don't do that.
Yeah, I'm
And then
asking why we don't do that.
Because that's just the misogynistic mindset of the church.
I don't think
They
it's-
don't.
I don't think
But
it's
they don't look at. No, they don't look at the male counterpart. It's
No,
always
he's
the
right.
woman that gets disfellowshipped or censored.
And I get that, and I think there's accountability on both sides, but I don't think it's about looking at it as one word. I think it's about, like you said, having that collective view and saying, let's have both of them here. Let's have that discussion. Look at their parents on both sides and actually manage it. But I think church hurt, like you said, comes in different forms.
Yeah.
It comes in it could be something like, when you're told, when you say, I'm depressed and someone just go and pray about, or you're not praying enough, or you don't have enough faith, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, collectively we should have responsibility. But I also think that individually, if we are present, and we see something or we hear something within the church and someone's done something, we should intervene and actually say, that's inappropriate. That's not, you shouldn't be doing that.
But what happened in that situation, again, coming back to those who are in leadership. So if you have someone who have been in the church for donkey years and they are the main person, everybody know this person, it's hard for you as a younger person or somebody who is just coming to church to challenge that person, because that person is always right. And then the young people, or the people growing up around those people, I think this is where a lot of the abuse comes in, because they trust adults and the parents trust this. We have a situation where so-and-so was abusive in the church, but they were told, how can you stop saying those things about brother so-and-so? He's a righteous man. He's helping the family. He does this, he does that. And there's no way you can then go against that. And then you have those people who grew up under that system, sees that person as the leader, and then they become to do everything is according to what that person have said. And there's no way to kind of...
There's no accountability.
Accountability.
For that
And that means that person, because I've heard that people say this, and where churches become a family church, a particular family runs that church, and nobody else can come and infiltrate. That name is the name that. Do you know what I mean? And have you found that, Aaron? I mean, do you think that's something that happens within the church, where there's a family a name or family name that runs that church?
I wouldn't say run the church, but I don't want to get into name calling and stuff. I don't get into that. But yeah, there's certain names that you hear where it's like there's a group of them. They don't run the church, have any influence, but you can tell who's related to who. And I've observed favoritism at times.
So how do you guys manage that? Like you said, is there a way around that? How do you manage a favoritism where, if it is one of the people that are prominent in the church and they push someone like this at a stage when she was a teenager down the stairs, how would anybody feel comfortable to intervene? Because it would be...
And again, it's not only physical things. So, you talk about depression and abuse, and abuse comes in different forms, and it could be verbal abuse, but because it's an elder telling off a child, it now become, you can't say anything about. But those are little things like that can have a lasting impact on people.
That's where our standards should come in. I believe we should have rules and standards that when you're in the everyday workplace, you've got harassment rules, you got discrimination rules, you got bullying, you got diversity, you got inclusion, you got what.
So basically, what we're saying is the Adventist Church.
No, just what I mean.
So basically, what we're saying is, we're saying the Adventist Church in the HR department.
Definitely does.
I don't think because you know what, the church, when we talk about the church, because Tyler Perry's not Adventist, we're talking about the church. I think it's just across the board. When we talk about church, we talk about beliefs and Christianity. I think it's about the bigger picture, about looking at it as what Anastasia is saying, is that there has to be a standard across conduct and also ethics, and also I think there's an aspect of conflict resolution is another thing that needs, and I think within, you mentioned about the Adventist Church, the BUC has created a conflict resolution centre where people, they go into the local community, local churches, and they do help with conflict resolution. But those are things that need to be put into across the board, because we're gonna, let's be honest, we're gonna have conflict across people are gonna do things, we're gonna do, but it's about how we manage and how we handle it. Because like Craig said, church hurt is when it's been left and no one stepped in, it's not been resolved, and that person is still having to hold on to that pain. I think that's what church is. But I think if you have a conflict resolution system where something's happened, there's a system of how that's managed, it will make all the difference.
But where you talk about the conflict that is happening and people, I think one of the issues is that, remember, the church is run by volunteers. If you go into the workplace, you have these things that you have to follow. You put all in because you know your job depends on you following all. When you go to church, you just go to church and there's no accountability. There's nothing there for you to and it's all volunteer work. The only person who is paid is the pastor. Mm-hmm. So if the elder wants to do anything, he does it, and who's going to stop him from doing that? Somebody else does something, and that. I think that is one of the key things. How do we navigate that situation where you need to have some accountability, and the church is not, I call it, run like a patty shop, where you just doing whatever you feel like. You need to make sure things are in place. And if we run the church as a business, we'll be more effective. Not run it as for profit, but run it as you would run your own business or any business, to make sure those things are in place, those rules and regulation and things are in place that prevents the abuse. So
that means
power and
that means we have policies in place. So having policies and processes that will stop that. So and then having a system where, like for example, the BUC's now got a conflict resolution centre where they can bring somebody into local church and deal with the kind of conflicts and stuff.
It's got to be someone from external, because you can't have people
making it inside.
You can't have people that are biased running a show that's supposed to be unbiased, because it doesn't work when you have a conflict of interest there.
So right, Craig, what is your matter that you want to talk about today?
Well, it's funny you started with the paternity discussion, and I want to drag us back, and you mentioned it earlier, and I was reading this article online about when fathers are involved with children make more progress in education, and the impact of a father to a child. And having this discussion, this is why is father so important in a family? And when I say father, it could be father figure, not just the paternal father, but male in society, very important to making sure that children and that the society it's the impact when they are not there, how impactful that is. I've been in education for over 20 years, and I've always said this, that 99% of the issues we see in children in the school is because there's a father figure or a father missing in the home. And I've said that to some in some sessions, and mothers were like, how dare you say that I'm a single mother and my children are, and I'm like, yes, there are few parents, mothers are great that have run their home and no father in the home, and children have turned out successful, but it still doesn't negate from the fact that there have been some missing things from those children, and it might not be seen now, but it affects them mentally or in the way they continue life in their own family. So I think fathers are so important, and without father figures, whether it's in the church or around children, it causes a whole great problem. And we started the discussion in that, and it's fathers.
I think it'll be interesting because Anastasia, you said that you got pregnant in your teens. From your own experience, what is your thoughts on that perspective, because you had a child? Was the father around?
No, he had to go. He lost his mind. But I laugh in that sense, because I know a lot of parents where they're like, you wait till your dad gets home, and their child is running amok. But because they have the second parent, they don't handle things that need to get addressed, and they wait for the second parent to come and handle it. And so we get children that will be in school where their mums can say diddly squat because they're not listening. And now we have to try and speak to the dad. I get that with certain ethnicities where I'm dealing with this child. The mum has no say. Until I phone the dad, I can't get anything from the child. That to me is a problem. Do you see what I mean? And then you also have some children where they've come from single parent homes and they are brilliant. They're well mannered, they're positive, they're engaged in society, whatever. But then here's my challenge to you. In today's society, is it necessary that you just need to have a father figure, or do you just need to have two parents?
No, can I just bring that, because I'm going to give you some data, and I'm going to go to you, Aaron, in a minute. The data that's out is that the stats is that they say that 80% of single parent dads, their kids, the outcomes of the children comes out, the outcomes are much better than in comparison to single parent mothers. Yes. That's the data, that's numbers.
And I agree with that.
So there has to be, that says that something is there that needs to be looked at closely. So in your experience, would you say that having that two parent, mum and a dad, do you think that was it's something that is essential? Or do you think that it's not essential?
Having worked with both sets of parenting and environments, I think two parents are positive. Because if we do maths, 2 is meant to be better than 1, right? That's just the thing. I'm still with it. Ooh, 1, 2, yeah, 2 is better than 1, right? But we then have to understand that the person that is handling business on their own will function in the different areas and will manage and organize and make their household in a certain way to benefit them and their children. So it's not the fact that I wouldn't say, and having been a single parent myself, knowing the way how the school, if they said to my daughter they're going to phone the mum, she'd be like, okay, because the type of parent I am. Do you see what I mean? But another parent, I know me working with them, they're just looking at me like, yeah, whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? But then you have 2 parents, and I'm here wanting to slap the 2 parents. Why your child can't? Do you see what I mean? So,
Aaron, what is your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say, because traditionally, we represent something as men. We represent authority, order, the idea of being in charge of a household. We're the ones that are more likely to go out and work and earn money and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm not saying women can't do their own business and stuff like that, but traditionally, we're the ones that actually make the house tick. We're the ones that are in charge, essentially. And so with that authority comes a certain level of respect and accountability. Now, as much as I respect single mothers for, what they've done for children, I'm not saying that all kids from single parent households are bad, but I don't think that necessarily is enough, because, for example, nowadays, last couple of weeks I've noticed, have you heard of these, a lot of these kids nowadays, there's this thing called like a flash mob, where you get they organize themselves on social media, but they're doing robberies now. Some of them were doing it at Oxford Street. There's like a prankster around my area in Stockton, a guy called Mizzy, and he was doing like robberies where he would go into central London and walk into people's houses.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff.
Twitter, yeah.
And then he'll be part of flash mobs that go and rob
TikTok.
places and stuff like that. And I think to myself, where are the fathers? And there's a part of me that thinks that it's partly an American thing as well, where I think the state and the role of the government has played a part in it as well, in the sense that, especially to black families, but especially to black families, that what we've done is that we have taken the incentive away from the father to be in the child's life, because the state will provide funds for the mother. So now the mother grows up thinking, I don't need a man because I can claim the state money. And this is why I'm going back to what I was saying about the paternity stuff like that. The state can come in and say, we will replace the father with money. So the mother will say, I don't need a man. If it's a female child, she'll say, I don't need a man either. And then she meets a young man that looks at her and finds it nicely, and then the cycle continues. Or you have a young man now that says, I don't know what it's like to be a man, so I'm going to go and find refuge in terrorism or gangs or whatever it is, and they'll be my father figure for me. But the idea that the state has come in my opinion, and almost it's skewed the family. Okay, do you know there are times in the marriage rate is decreasing at a rapid level in this country? In America as well. You know, the marriage, even during slavery, like the slave trade, black people still getting married at a higher rate than today. And it's only because the welfare state has come in the last, say, 70 years or so, that marriage has decreased significantly, because the state is the father nowadays.
But that's only financially. You can have financial support from the state, but they're not parenting. And that's the mistake that people make. Parenting, the state don't parent. The state might give you some cash, but the state is not parenting.
I know, but
And
that's all the
I
state
have
can
two-
do.
And I have children that they come from 2-parent families and they're a hot mess.
No, but you know what it is? Do you know what it is? But what's happened is that a lot of women and have put that as the criteria of having a man is money, rather than looking at parenting. That is what they put in. They're
Child
saying
support is what I'm
if you don't have this level of money, I've heard numbers like, you know, six, you know.
But that didn't come from just parenting. That didn't come from just money. That comes from feminism. The society today creates the woman that doesn't need a counterpart. So because the woman doesn't need a counterpart, there are many affluent, very highly paid women out there that go and do IVF, have a child, can afford college. There's no need for a man, but they just want a child. What are you going to do with them? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you understand the difference? It's no longer just a welfare state. There are now women today who choose solely. They don't want a man. They just want to have their kid. And they will go and pay how much money to go and do that.
It's the impact on those children who have gone through life, not experience a father figure, not necessarily a paternal father, but having that experience to do things with a father, to see a father show love to a mother, to someone, to care, to do the little things. You know, I grew up with my dad, and my dad was a hard-working man. I could do things with him. I've seen women who are able to do lots of DIY things because they had a dad who, not because they had a brother, but the dad would call them to kneel and pick that they can handle their own, having their own places. And it's that impact, and it's not, you see the education
that same woman you're talking about there, that woman will then go and be single because they can handle their own stuff.
But that's my point.
You need to be careful about that.
But that's my whole point.
That's
the whole point.
It's got
She
issue
can,
now.
but that's kind of my whole point though, because the woman can do everything. The woman can do everything. That's fine. But then the impact of the child is not necessarily an accessory that you can just pick and choose which part of life you want. I want this, that, and that, and that. No, it's about more than just that. It's more than just you. It's narcissistic that some of these women do this, right? Where they have this idea of, I want a perfect life. I want everything about a family without having an actual family. I want all the financial benefits that come with that. I want to be able to take my son to football games or watch them grow up to go to university or whatever, but I don't want a man there.
Yeah.
So this is about, it's like a buffet where you get to pick and choose. I want the chicken, I want the curry goat, but I don't want the coleslaw.
Yeah.
And the coleslaw makes up the whole thing, you know what I mean?
I think there's something to be said about the feminism movement. I think the feminism movement, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it's a bit of an oxymoron to have feminism in the church, because it almost goes, I dare say, I'm going to say it goes against what exactly we're supposed to be about as Christians. And I'd say that Christians across the board, because we're about family, we're about coming together and working together. And it's very clear in the scriptures about what it's supposed to look like. So to be, and it's not about someone being less than or being looked down upon because you're a woman. I think what has been missed is the fact that we're not against each other. No one should be against each other. A man and a woman should not be against. We're supposed to be working together as a team. And like you said, 2 is better than 1. And I think the perception and the way that it's been pushed has impacted the church, has been made to feel like, there is an issue, when actually no, there shouldn't be an issue. If we look at the scriptures and do what we're supposed to be doing, that whole concept is not in line with what we believe. It doesn't match up and it doesn't marry.
One other thing I find as an educator in the classroom is how men are treated, fathers are treated by teachers. And really when you have, especially in primary education, where you hardly have men in there, and a child will go through the whole education not having a father, a man who is a teacher who will teach them. It skews their mind and their thinking that women can only do this and men can't do this. And then those children don't see men or father figures in a way that, fathers can do these things, or men can do these things, that are supposed to be women. Just like in the nursing profession, when a man says he's a nurse, you start thinking, oh, I thought nurses were women. Father figures, male figures are very important in society and does impact how we grow up and what children become in the future, and then that pass on to the next generation, and that's very key.
Yeah, because with feminism, feminism for me, there's a difference between having like rights as a woman and like trying to get into the idea of like gender roles, where I feel like, in my opinion, I don't think Christianity and the modern definition of feminism are compatible, because feminism essentially blurs the line between what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And we're quite clear on what it means to us as Christians, but feminists will teach you that you can have literally everything you want. And it's narcissistic in a way. It's not to say that you can't have everything you want. And civil liberty, get political here, if you're a citizen and you're a woman, yeah, you can do whatever you want, no problem. But as a Christian, do you want that for yourself? If you really believe in God, do you actually want it for yourself? The answer is no, then by all means do it. But then I don't know how the two are compatible.
Do you know what, Aaron, it's exactly what you said about, and it's what Paul said, everything is, you know, permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And I think it's about the concept. There's nothing wrong with wanting human rights, like you said. It's about your dignity and your human rights. I don't have an issue with a woman wanting the dignity, the human rights and everything else, but the modern definition and the way that it has been pushed, like you said, is not actually what it was set out to be. The whole purpose of back in the day feminism was the fact that you could have a choice. That if you wanted to be a stay-at-home mum, you can. And if you didn't want to be a stay-at-home mum and you wanted to go out and work, you could do that. That was basically the basis of it. And now it's about, no, that's not what this is about. And there's also this perception that's been pushed of being oppressed. And I don't know whether that's accurate or not, whether there's an oppression there. I mean, what do you guys think?
I don't think in this country. In fact, what you'll find is that there's a study that I read a couple of weeks ago, where they did an experiment, a social experiment, where they compared Western countries to like Scandinavian countries in terms of like the gender pay gap and the more choice you give people. In the idea in this country we have is that we think that the more that we push girls towards traditionally male subjects like STEM, like science, maths, etc., that the differences will shrink between men and girls and boys. But we find that the differences is that in Scandinavian countries, you'll find the differences grow between men and women. They don't shrink. If you were to give them both a choice of what you want to do with their life, there's still more women who would choose to have the family dynamic over a career. The more choice you give people, you would think the differences would grow, but no, they're shrinking. So it's in this country, I'm thinking, are we doing it because we want free choice, or are we doing it for ulterior reasons? I don't want to get too political, but are they doing it for reasons that have not to do with choice? We pretend that it's about choice, but when given the choice, the opposite effect is what you think is going to happen is happening. So
you think it's a Trojan? It could be a possibility.
No, but you're answering your own question in a sense of the same thing there with that say introducing STEM. The reason why more women are going out to work, are trying to earn more, do whatever, is because sadly the family household economics is not as it was years ago. People, even though society overall earned less, things cost less, so they could still be affordable. Today, society, we're all in an economic downturn, whether they want to call it austerity or not, right? We've got issues financially. Everybody is struggling.
They have one house.
So with one income. And that's the issue. So now everybody's like, we've got to work.
yeah, but it's
we've
not.
got to go out
I think my point is, it's not about the money itself. It's about
caring for the family.
It's about that.
That's
essentially.
what I'm saying. So
So it's not about the money itself. It's more to do with what they actually want out of life. And unfortunately, based upon the research that I've done, a lot of them are still trying to choose traditional lifestyles. Even if it means they earn less and they're a bit poorer, they still value that over having a more affluent family, but you're not really a family because you're always working. They still value those moments together. It's just not, you can't really replace that.
I don't know how to.
In my opinion.
I understand, but you know what, Aaron, I'm going to go to your subject matter now. So what would be your subject matter today?
I think mine was what role will AI, artificial interface, what impact will that have on society?
Okay, all right. So what, when you say a role, do you think that it's perfectly reasonable to have AI to do like a lot of the manual stuff that is coming that can be done quite straightforward?
Well, it will affect a lot of people in different ways. So it will affect every aspect of humanity in terms of not just economics, but finances, and more of like a holistic side of it, where we will start to question ideas as to what is real and what is fake. There are people will be unemployed. I think in the next 20 years or so, jobs that people have now will be replaced by machines eventually. So they're already starting to do it. You go to McDonald's, for example, there's only like 2 people behind the till now. You've got those machines, you just touch it yourself and you'll do it. And soon, if you create a program that can run everything simultaneously, AI can replace that.
So then do you think they should have a standard money that is given to...
a universal basic
income that will support people that are not going to be able to... Obviously, that work is going to be taken.
But if you do that, you kind of... I don't know, because it's economics. The more you're given, the less valuable it is. So even if you are given a certain amount of money every single month, employers are just... business are just going to charge more for what you've given, really, because it's given to you, it's not earned. So it's not quite the same. Plus, with that, there's caveats. They can just as easily take that benefit away from you. You're already talking about things like cashless societies and how banks are closing at rapid rates. So it's a tricky one. I don't know.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I had this discussion a couple of weeks ago with some colleagues of mine, and I was thinking, in the education world, I know head teachers are trying to grapple with this AI coming in. We have been using AI a long time. AI from typing and autocorrect words and all. AI has been there. It's just more advanced now. And you have said that the job that people are doing are going to be replaced with AI. That doesn't mean job is not going to be there, because you need to be. I always say the children who are in primary school now, the jobs are going to do 10, 15, 20 years on the line has not yet been created. Because with AI comes a different society, a different world that you have to now start creating things and doing things and programming and all those things. The jobs will be there, but the problem is that the education system is still 100 years old.
It's not catching up yet.
And we are teaching children to do maths and reading and writing when you can do all of that on Google and you go search, so you're teaching children what is already there for them to do. And we have missed that mark. During the pandemic, schools were forced to do electronic learning online. Yeah. As soon as we're back to school, that was cut off. So we regress back to pen and paper and reading, and this is what is happening. So AI, I think, is a good thing. Yes, it's going to impact people, but those who are going to feel it more are those people who are still going to try to be back in the days, book and pencil and paper.
And here's my challenge for you. They have right now, in each country in the West, gone to courts to file suits that AI cannot annihilate human beings.
It's like iRobot, isn't it? With Will Smith.
I watched Terminator, I watched Total Recall, I watched iRobot, I like sci-fi. So what are you trying to tell me? Oftentimes, what you see in these films is really what they are introducing you to it years before so you can get acclimatized, right? So now you've gone to court to say that AI cannot annihilate human beings. Well, hello. Is AI going to follow the lawsuit? It's a machine. So it's really going to think, oh, I'm not going to kill off people. These things here, I just listen and I try and compare to biblical things. These last days here, things are happening rapidly. Wisdoms, knowledge, things like this. They took the Concorde off, but they're bringing in a faster plane. Do you see what I mean? You can now fly straight from here to Australia where you couldn't do that before. Because it's 17 hours. I'm not doing it, it's too long. But, so what I'm saying is that we have to look at the balance of human life and what we do as individuals to what AI. What's his name, that man I cannot stand? They showed you with his 3 new girlfriends. He has made them in every ethnicity. And people are already signing up to purchase them.
What guy are you talking about, sorry?
The robot girlfriends. You can say the man's name. I can't stand it.
No, what's his name? What does he own?
That's the one.
Is it Musk?
Yes.
Okay.
Right? And people are already signed up for their robot girlfriends.
Yeah, because AI...
Yeah, but the thing is that something that are you against in terms of Christianity? You know, because it's not a real.
Why am I going to talk to some machine?
But you talk to.
You talk to Alexa.
Because sometimes
I don't.
That's what I say. I was like Alexa.
Talk to Alexa.
Alexa,
You talk
exactly.
to Alexa, Siri?
No,
Siri?
I plugged out Alexa.
What about
because
Siri?
Alexa knows too much of my business. No, that's for you iPhone people. I don't do them either. So all I'm saying.
Can talk to your car?
No, I don't talk to him. So what I'm saying is, I like technology. I like gadgets. I'm that individual. But I also know the fine line. When I go to the supermarket, I prefer to go to the person than to go to the self-checkout. Why? Because that's going to keep her in the job. I do try and think of the balance. You can have self-checkout, fine. I've got one item, fine, self-checkout. When I got my shopping, I like a personal touch. You know, I don't want every minute I've still got to call the person because it can't figure out that I did put the grapes, but it doesn't feel the grapes on the sensor.
But do you know what I think? I think there's a choice here that needs to, that when you think about AI, there's a choice that we can go down the technology to, like sort of like timeline and follow that through, or follow a timeline where we're actually in like pouring into ourselves in terms of ourselves spiritually and our minds and stuff like that. And I think it's like what you said. It's about. We've seen the Terminator. We know what happens. We know iRobot. Is that something we as a group of community in Christendom should be thinking about? That maybe we should be spending more time and connecting with people with more of a pouring into themselves rather than depending on technology and depending on those type of things. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, my thoughts are that I think that technology is it has the potential to replace things that were once only done by humans. So for example, the robot girlfriends now, right? Where people would prefer to, because of all the politics around like, things like we're talking about before, like paternity tests and stuff like that, right? Some people want all the benefits of sex without any of the commitment. So all they do, they buy the robot girlfriend, have sex with the robot girlfriend, and that will be it. There's no, they have all the pleasure of sex and everything, but at the end of it, there's no paternity test, there's nothing like that. They're just pleasure and that's it, and they go about their daily lives. As a consequence of that, it means either birth rates will decline because no one's having sex with other people because there's too much of risk involved, or marriage rates will decline because I don't need to be married to you to have a child nowadays. Because nowadays you got IVF, or you got, like, with all due respect, these men that are simps, in my opinion, that just replace deadbeat fathers. There's no accountability anymore. Everyone just does whatever they want. And I think technology kind of enables that, in my opinion. I think that, because remember, it's called artificial intelligence. So as in, it's artificial, man-made intelligence. So it's not going to, the way we program things, it's not going to be with necessarily a biblical worldview on it. It's going to be more to do with convenience. It's going to be more to do with what we want and gratification rather than what's best for humanity itself. And I think that from a civil liberties point of view, all the state can do is try to put guidelines in place, like safeguarding in place. Like, for example, with the age of consent, you can't do it if you're a certain age, or you can't be raped, things like that. Apart from that, you're on your own. So you can choose what to do with the artificial intervention.
In that context, would that be if somebody was in the church and they did get an AI girlfriend?
There's no such thing.
No. Let's an AI girlfriend. When you say, would that be classified as, and they were having sexual relations with that person? Would that be classified as something like sinning and
Sin in the mind.
But
Remember, sin is from the mind. So this is the mistake that people have. Sin is from the mind. So if you've already thought to go and sleep with the robot girlfriend, you've already sinned. My issue, though, for me with AI, if you just because it's a robot, you've already sinned in it. If you ain't married, well, maybe they gonna marry them soon. Then it will be legal.
That's the whole, it goes.
But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, my thing is, why I feel sad for artificial intelligence. That ChatGPT, people's sermons ain't gonna be from the word. The schoolwork ain't gonna be out of your brain. We're gonna lose some of the greatest minds on the planet coming forth because they're gonna get lazy.
It's Skynet.
And go with ChatGPT. You see what I'm saying?
Skynet, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. People will be lazy. Remember, you will always try to find an easier way out. So if I can get you to do my essay why am I going to think about it?
ChatGPT.
Do you know what I mean? If I can get you to do my sermon, that's 3 sermons.
Well, it's more than that. It's not just do the sermon, but you can now with AI, you can actually create your own sort of avatar that looks like you.
Yes.
And then it's like that sermon can be brought out by that person.
It's not real. It's not real.
Okay.
It's not real.
Two things I want to go. Robot girlfriend and so forth. Whatever it is the same as having a sex toy or a sex doll or whatever. It's coming from all of those things. So the same thing. But on the other side, using AI, I know you're saying, are we saying that we shouldn't use it? Because in the Christian world, it could become a useful tool. So when we had
COVID.
Lockdown. Zoom was there, and we were using all of those. I did so many things with children. I was able to connect all over the world with children and present programs. Shouldn't we, as an organization, be focused on using these things to enhance to reach more people than focusing on the negatives?
So see it as more of an opportunity. But the thing about it is that, and I agree with you that there is an opportunity. It's like a hammer.
Yeah.
You can smack someone over the head, or you can build a house, or do something with it.
Yeah.
So I think if we look at it as a tool, fine. But what happens when because it's a tool now, and when people get used to using the tool, they've got access to it, they learn it within the church and outside the church, and then they say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. What about if I want to have a girlfriend that is AI? It's just a tool. It's not really.
But the thing is, I was gonna say that sometimes it's like, because it's called artificial intelligence, there will come a point when, in my opinion, it moves from there. Like, okay, there's a film called I, Robot, right? Yes. And there's like the scene in there where they have like 3 fundamental rules, but then some of the robots became essentially started to think for themselves, become a bit sentient, and the rules clashed. And eventually you had robots fighting other robots. So I think to myself, so for example, we had let's say for example we use it in like what's called like face recognition technology, for example. If you put AI into that technology, for example, right, and it thinks to itself, okay, black people are, for example, more likely to be stabbed or killed or whatever. If it finds a person that's black and thinks that this person is more likely to be a threat, it might
annihilate them.
Do you know what I mean? This is Skynet. This is Skynet.
Terminator.
This is Skynet.
I think John Connor will be looking at us like this.
I told you all about this.
I'm saying, is there a line drawn? Like, you remember what you said earlier about the difference between like sex girlfriends and sex robot? So a sex toy is exactly that. It's a sex toy. It's meant for your own personal pleasure, right? But you know what a sex toy is, right? When it's done, it's done. A girlfriend now is supposed to be as in like a human being, right? Someone that's supposed to come with their own, it's another human being, comes with its own sense of emotions and feelings and everything like that, right? And then you go on to marry the girlfriend. But the point is, a sex girlfriend is not a girlfriend at all by definition, because it's not a human being, because it's not alive. It's not a person. It's made out of silicone and batteries and plastic and stuff like that. It's not a person.
That's what sex toy is, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is. But the thing is, with a sex toy, you know it's a toy. With a girlfriend,
no, but with an AI girlfriend,
it implies.
She's gonna be talking to you.
Yeah, but with the AI, AI, you know what it is already.
After the girlfriend, the wife is talking too much. You can't switch your wife up, but you can switch it up.
Think about with AI. AI is learning you all the time. So like I was telling about my thing with Alexa. I used to play gospel. I play gospel music usually every Friday. And one Friday, I didn't put on the gospel music, and I heard this music playing in my house. I was like, what the hell? When I go down, I'm freaking out now. I'm like, what is this? When I go downstairs, there's Alexa playing the music for me. I said, hello, Heifer. You getting plugged out.
My friend.
You know too much.
I have a friend of mine, That's too
much.
She has an Alexa and she has what's called like a Google thing. And they make them talk to each other. It's scary as hell.
It's terrible.
Oh, you know what, guys? As it's been amazing talking to you guys, and I really enjoyed it. And we're gonna definitely do this again, and definitely catch up. But I'm glad that you dealt with Alexa. I mean, I don't have Alexa for that reason, because I thought forward. And you still use it.
No, it's fun. That's it.
I love technology. I'm a technology person.
That's plugged out.
And it's the way forward.
It's the way forward. Well, On that note, guys, thank you for joining us on the IN2G show. We love your company. And if there's anything that we talked about that has had an impact on you, there are going to be links in the bio to support you. There's going to be, places that you can connect with. We've got organisations like the Cornerstone Counselling Services and other organisations. And like I said before, the British Union Conference has got a conflict resolution centre that can help with conflict resolution. So we're going to put all that information down below. And if you've got any other questions or if you've got any comments, do not forget to make that comment there. And as always, it's better with God.